Here is the Eagles Now rundown for today's show. Philadelphia signing a right tackle, formerly of the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Is there major drama inside the Eagles locker room? And what does Craig Carton know? All of that coming up. I'm Chase Sr. So glad all of you are here with us. First, we need your help. Do you want us to go to the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis next week? If you want us to go to interview some prospective future Eagles and some draft targets, do some mock drafts, sit-down interviews, we need to get to 72,000 subscribers. The bosses are watching me right now, and they're pressuring me. They're saying, Chase, we'll put you on a flight to go to Indy if you get to 72,000 subs. As you can see with the figures here to my right, we're only 48 people away. And if you hit that sub button, you're a winner at the end of the day because you get daily and year-round Eagles talk right here on Eagles Now by Chat Sports. So do us a favor, just hit that subscribe button right now. To an Eagles transaction. Yesterday, we talked about how Howie Roseman in Philadelphia signed running back Ty Davis-Price, former third-round pick for the San Francisco 49ers, to a reserve and futures contract as part of their 90-man roster. And now Philadelphia signing a right tackle in Darian Kinnard, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a 2022 fifth-round pick by Kansas City out of Kentucky. He played 6 special team snaps as a rookie. And this past year, as the Chiefs went back-to-back, in 2024, they're going to be looking for a three-peat. He spent all of this past season on the practice squad for Kansas City. This is a pretty intriguing player for Philadelphia. As we know, Howie Roseman always likes investing in the offensive line and the defensive line. It's really been the backbone for this organization going all the way back to when Joe Banner was calling the shots. And obviously, Howie Roseman learned under him. And he's kind of adopted that team-building philosophy. For Kinnard, really good size. 6'5", 322, primarily plays at right tackle. He's still a very young player. And with the Eagles having the best offensive line coach in the NFL in Jeff Stoutland, a potential developmental prospect here who couldn't figure it out with Kansas City, may not have been a scheme fit, maybe a better scheme fit with Kellen Moore now calling the plays. 3-year starter at Kentucky, so a lot of experience in the college ranks. He excelled there under head coach Mark Stoops in a zone run scheme. And what I like about him and why I'm excited about this fringe roster move, because there's no guarantee he's going to make the 53, agility, speed, and a lot of power for his size. And going back to that previous point, when you think about some of the moves that Howie Roseman prioritizes in the draft, in free agency, whether it is a move on the periphery of the roster or a move that Howie Roseman forks over a lot of cash to an individual player, Howie Roseman invests in the offensive line and the defensive line. And he's doing that with a buy low player like Kinnard, who might be able to be a hit for this Eagles roster. Story number 2 here on the show, and I have some thoughts on this. Craig Carton, FS1, former radio host on WFAN. A lot of people know about his legal history as well. Got bopped for fraud in a ticketing scheme. Said he knows why the Eagles fell apart in 2023 and why they lost 7 of 8 games down the stretch. Here's a direct quote from Craig Carton on his show on FS1 yesterday. Quote, "I can tell you that it is a problem that would splinter any group of men. Any group of men. It is a real, significant issue, and it cannot be fixed. I'm not going to tell you any more than that, but I know what the problem was. I know the Eagles are trying to fix it, and I don't think it can be fixed. So it will be very interesting to see if a high-profile player is no longer with the Eagles going into this season." Is there anything to make of that from a guy who's known to be a talking head, who always has an anti-Philadelphia slant, as he was on WFAN, a radio powerhouse in New York City? And who could that high-profile player be? A lot of people are speculating it's A.J. Brown. More on that in a moment. But first, make sure you sign up with Game Time. If you didn't get your significant other anything for Valentine's Day last week, you kind of missed the boat. You can make up for it with getting him or her some tickets to a sporting event. But with Game Time, why I love using this app, you don't just have to use Game Time to go to a game. I love comedy. I love music. You can go to a comedy show. You can go to a concert. You can go to a theatrical event as well. And if you download the app for free and you use the code EaglesChat, you get $20 off. With Game Time, best seats at the lowest price guaranteed. You're going to get in the door for extraordinary value, and you're going to be able to see, prior to purchasing your ticket, what you will be seeing from the vantage point, in this instance, Wells Fargo Center, for a Flyers game, 76ers game. I know a lot of the snowbirds are going to be going down to Clearwater, Florida to see the Philadelphia Phillies partake in some spring training action. You have Phillies regular season tickets at Citizens Bank Park available, but also some games in Clearwater available as well. You have to use the Game Time app. It's the best ticketing app out there, and I don't think it's particularly close. In fact, I know it's not close at all. We really care about you. We want you to save money. We want you to get good tickets. We don't want you to have an obstructed view. That's all possible with Game Time. $20 off. Use the code EaglesChat. That link is hanging out in the comment section as well as in the description of this video. So Craig Carton claiming he knows why the Eagles fell apart. Let's get to my thoughts on that. First off, why is Craig Carton on that show on FS1 always standing? Now, I'm saying that, and a lot of you might be saying, well, Chase, you're standing as well. But I'm not talking to other hosts here on the set of Chat Sports. Craig Carton is always standing, and his co-hosts or his guests or a former athlete or a current player, they're always sitting down. It's like they're looking up to Craig Carton. Like they're beneath him, and he's just towering over everybody. And I get it. I like standing around because I have a lot of energy, right? And I like to move around a little bit. I like to get fired up. Go Birds! But I don't have anybody else just sitting down beneath me, right? So that's point number one and takeaway number one when I saw that clip. Number two, what could this possibly be? And obviously this is the big talking point with what Craig Carton had to say. Is it infidelity? Do you have one player messing around with another player's girl? That is something that could splinter the locker room. Shout out to Delonte West and LeBron's mom. Could it be players beefing inside the locker room? Or is there some coaching drama where some message wasn't getting relayed from coach to coach, player to player? But all of this kind of gets the wheels churning a little bit. And it brings up an interview that we did here on Philadelphia Eagles Now with Eagles punt returner and wide receiver Britton Covey. Remember what he said when I asked him about why the Eagles collapsed? He said the messages weren't getting through from coach to coach, coach to player. You had some players pointing fingers, and the Philadelphia Eagles let outside noise really distract them from the task at hand, and it took away their love for the game of football. You have Craig Carton on this side, which is the extremist side, conspiracy theory type of avenue, and then you have the more realistic take from Britton Covey. Let's revisit what Covey said, and this is what I think really happened with the Philadelphia Eagles, which would then shut down what Craig Carton had to say. Earlier, you alluded to the fact that the season just ended in a disastrous way, and I grew up in Westchester from the Philadelphia area, lifelong diehard Eagles fan, and make it to the Super Bowl last year, a crushing defeat against Kansas City. I still haven't watched the highlights. I can't go back and watch it because I'm still heartbroken about it. But the expectations were still really high going into this year. And I had this kind of theory and talking point where oftentimes there was a Super Bowl hangover, right? And if the Eagles were to have started slow this year, everybody would have been like, it's just a Super Bowl hangover. It's all good. Nick Sirianni will be back. His job wasn't going to come into question. But because you started 10-1 and then you lost 7 of 8 to end the year, the sour taste and that collapse is what really, I guess, put the team under the microscope where it was deemed as this epic choke job. But having sustained success at the NFL level is like really, really difficult. The team just looked a little bit slow and worn down, I thought, mentally and physically. Was that a part of the Eagles' downslide at the end of the year? Why did that happen?
Yes, it was. I think that a lot of times winning can not solve problems, but it can mask problems, and you have to learn how to correct things even when you win. I actually think Coach Sirianni does a really good job of it. That's something I've been impressed with, but it can be tough. It's like, all right, you're 10-1. Doesn't mean there's no problems. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean all is well. And so as you get later on in the season, people have more film on you and take advantage of your weaknesses. You have to be willing to adjust. Now, I think the problem is a lot of times is you overcorrect. Everyone wants the big flashy change, right? I think changing coordinators was really hard for our defense, just speaking defensively, schematically. But that was the big flashy change that everyone wanted. And then at the end of the season, everyone is saying, why did we do that? It's like, well, that's what everyone wants. And so you have to be willing to make minuscule, smaller course corrections, and you don't want to wait until it's game over to do it. You need to do it after a 35-15 win. We got to fix this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's doing that. And then I definitely think we got emotionally tired from trying to figure out what the problem was. And we kept trying to pinpoint it at this and pinpoint it at this. And there was some miscommunication, I think, from coaches to players. There was some pointing fingers from player to player. And there was kind of letting, outside voices impact our love for the game and just the happiness that we had. And all that combined to really just kind of make us spiral. But honestly, I think that you're going to see a team this year that is going to be like, I'm not letting that same thing happen. And I'm not saying like just on the field performance, but I'm not letting that impact me. I'm not letting this impact me. And I think you're going to see a lot more resilient people, players because of it. I know I will be. Mm-hmm. I just don't think you can. I know it's so you want to pinpoint a spot that goes wrong, right? You want to if Brian Johnson. It wasn't Brian Johnson. I definitely think we needed some changes. And so, we have a new coordinator. I think it's going to be good for us. Nick Sirianni wasn't, it's a combination, but that answer's just not sufficient. It's like, but we should have done this. And so I just think you need change. You need fresh eyes. But we still got the pieces.
Yeah.
We still got the pieces this year. And we got 58 draft picks. It's crazy. So we're going to do something. But yeah, I definitely think we overcorrected in some areas last year and undercorrected in others.
Yeah. And for those of you who missed that sit-down interview with Britton Covey from Super Bowl 58 Radio Row in Las Vegas, the entirety of it is up on the channel here, about 15 minutes with Covey, and we talked about a lot of interesting things. Obviously, why the Eagles fell apart, the nuances to being a punt returner in the NFL, his thoughts on Kellen Moore, and how he wants to have more of a role within this Eagles offense as a wide receiver. That clip ended up being pretty much the biggest talking point and the biggest story in Philadelphia on WIP, The Fanatic, and some other outlets like Crossing Broad over the next couple of days, because the biggest question from Eagles fans, why did the Eagles fall apart? Covey with his answer, Carton with his theory and his sources. He did add it's an off-field issue where everything from Covey seemed to be inside the building. Now, it's important to keep in mind, it's also Craig Carton, right? He could be talking out of his ass, and he's kind of made of a career out of doing stuff like this and saying these types of things. Adam Schefter, ESPN NFL insider, was on 97.5 The Fanatic, and he was, of course, asked about Carton's comments, and he said, quote, I texted someone in the organization yesterday, and the text I got back was, none of that shit happened. Now, Schefter is obviously trustworthy as an NFL insider. He's what you call a traditional journalist, old school Big J. And you take what he says, and obviously you put stock in it. But also, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you want to shoot down this type of narrative. You collapsed at the end of the year. You were the defending NFC champions. You started 10-1, and then from there, you really pissed down your leg. And the Eagles could be wanting to shoot down all of the negativity so it doesn't carry over to the 2024 season. The Eagles are not obligated to give Schefter any information. In fact, they could utilize him as a mouthpiece to get the positive spin out there as compared to the negative angle from Craig. Something to keep in mind. It's all about leverage. It's all about the narrative. Everybody knows that nowadays. All right, let's round out the show with this. Is there anything to make of Craig Carton's comments? Type L for legit or F for convicted fraud. Let me know down in the chat, and we'll catch you next time here on the show.